You're watching Hockey North, and the PWHL draft just finished. It was chaos after the expansion draft. Karissa, you just came back from Ottawa. Give me the goods, man. It's so nice to see your face. Should we start with Kristina Kaltinkova, first European-born player to be drafted first overall? Come on, how significant is this?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's great to see you two. So much has happened since we last talked. I feel like I've lived about 5 different lives since then. I'm guessing PWHL GMs have, at least 20 more gray hairs after the last insane 3 weeks, like just unprecedented player movement. It's been wild, and the draft was wild too, Anastasia. But yeah, let's talk about that first overall pick. And it is historic, as you mentioned. First European born player to go first overall. My cat's here, by the way. He's very excited to see me. I just arrived back home about a half an hour ago, so he's pretty excited about the pick too. First Czech player to go first overall, and I think it just means so much for women's hockey in Czech. Like, you think about what's happened there in the last few years. Like, that program got promoted to the top tier of the World Championship, and went to the Olympics for the first time. They just hosted the World Championship for the first time, and by all accounts that was amazing. And now they have a first overall pick and someone that people there can point to and be like, okay, that is how we get there. There is a path. We have someone to follow. So I think that's amazing. And then on the ice, she's like a power forward. She's 5'9". She's going to add more size to the Sirens up front. She's got a heck of a shot. She finished her college career as Colgate University's all-time leading goal scorer. So it's going to be really fun to see what Greg Fargo, who was actually her coach in college, does with her. So he could, put her on a line with Sarah Fillier. She can help insulate her a little bit, maybe with the physicality. They can feed each other, just like we saw with Alex Carpenter last season, or she can own her own line. It's, the possibilities are endless, which is awesome.
It feels like this was a true first for me, and this makes me feel a little bit old, but I felt like for the first 2 seasons of the PWHL, there were a lot of similar bones to the CWHL, the NWHL, the PHF. And now with expansion and just with so many people moving, it feels like a new era, okay? And there were so many headlines for the draft. So I mean, we could talk for an hour about this, but 4 big trades. Every time Cassie Campbell-Pascal took the stage, everyone gasped. You physically were in the building. Just quickly touch upon the energy, because it really did feel like there was something bubbling up, something special.
It did. Well, I mean, first of all, everybody knew that Pascal Daoust, the GM of the New York Sirens, he had all these extra defenders, and he had these massive holes at the top of his, lineup at forward after losing Jesse Eldridge and Alex Carpenter in the expansion process. And going into the draft, like particularly the day of the draft, like, that was sort of the talk on the draft floor, is something is going to happen. So exactly when, exactly what, would it involve his first overall pick? Would it involve another pick? We knew it was going to involve a defender, but just the specifics of it, everybody was kind of waiting. And then, you saw him, make his first overall pick. And then, of course, Cassie Campbell comes strutting out onto the stage before Toronto picks. And there you have it. That's, I think, a match made in heaven kind of for both teams. So Pascal Daoust gets, the other top forward in the draft. So he now has, I'd say, the 2 best forwards who were available in Casey O'Brien, who had one of the most productive offensive careers in women's college history. There were only, I think, 7 players who produced more career points than she did. So to put it into perspective, nobody has produced as much offensively as she has since Alex Carpenter in 2016, who happens to be one of the players that she's replacing on the New York Sirens. And then, of course, in Toronto, they get Ella Shelton, one of the best defenders in the world. They now have 3 really smart defenders who think the game really well, who both all went to Clarkson, and Renata Fast and Savannah Harmon, and now Ella Shelton. And then we saw 2 other major trades. Kristen Campbell going to Vancouver, where she's going to get a fresh start. And I think that's really interesting because they've got Emirates Mashmeyer locked in as the starter. But Vancouver is going to be doing a lot of traveling. So, for them to have a tandem that can kind of share that workload, I think, is really smart. And then the last one, Abby Rock going to Montreal. Her and Poulin are going to have to learn how to play nice, but I actually really love this trade, with Kristen O'Neill going the other way, of course, to New York. But nobody wants to play against Abby Rock. Like, that is going to make Montreal really annoying to play against in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, immediately I was like, oh, that's going to be a fun pairing. When Kristen O'Neill was traded, though, like, gasps, audible gasps. What were you hearing? What were you seeing? Because again, this was a big draft for trades.
Yeah, it really was. And for people who were wondering, like, why we didn't see more before, while they were kind of sorting out expansion and sorting out the expansion draft and stuff like that, the teams actually weren't able to make trades. So that window just opened about a week ago. And so yeah, it was very shocking on the draft floor. There were fans at the Hard Rock Hotel in Ottawa, and you could hear people say, "What?" Like, people were like audibly shocked. And talking to Danielle Sauvageau after, like, she said, didn't necessarily go into it like looking for that trade, but when it came across her desk, it was one of those things where, like, she is somebody who never wants to trade a player, right? She always has the player's best interest in mind. But when you start looking into it, you think, okay, this could actually be really good for our team. Like, Abby Rock, we talked about how much of a pest she is to play against, but she's also really great in the faceoff circle. I think her percentage last year was maybe even better than Poulin, who is always at the top for that. So I really like that trade for Montreal.
Gonna put you in the hot seat. Who won the draft?
Ooh, okay. So this is always a hard question to answer because the answer right after the draft and then the answer 6 months later is always different, I think. But I think you've got to talk about the Sirens, like Pascal Daoust going out there and getting the two best forwards available with the first, just in the first three picks. And he finished the draft with 9 picks in 6 rounds. So, I mean, you've got 9 kind of lottery tickets there, right? So just mathematically, I think you have to look at him as a winner. And then you look at, Toronto as well. And Toronto, they used their first pick in the second round on Emma Gentry. She's 5'11". And the first reaction Renata Fast said that the players had in their little group chat, as they were watching all the picks be made, is like, okay, we just got a lot bigger. Like, they drafted a lot of big, tall players, which I think is just kind of what we've learned about the league, that, the players who can just plunk themselves in front of the net, they tend to do the best. So I'm going to say early on, I'm going to say Toronto. I'm going to say, can I pick 3 winners? I'm like picking half the league. That's cheating.
Yeah, you know what? We just want both teams to have fun, eh?
We just want everyone to have fun, and so does my cat Bernie. But Montreal too. Just a little note on them. By that trade, by Toronto flipping that trade to New York, that actually gave Montreal a fantastic gift, and her name is Nicole Gosling, and some people call her Erin Ambrose 2.0. So that is a heck of a pickup for Montreal.
Let's keep on Montreal, because there obviously was some individual awards handed out too, and Marie-Philippe Poulin, I mean, what can we say about her? Like, we are just so privileged to be living on the same timeline, seeing her brilliance. Of course, Forward of the Year, MVP of the Year. What else does she have to achieve?
Yeah, well, the Walter Cup, I think is the big thing, right? Like, that's what's missing from her trophy case, and I bet you she would trade all of that to be able to lift the Walter Cup. But she is. I mean, she's the best player in the world. What else can you say about her? And when I was writing my story yesterday, Anastasia, I looked back to, the last time she won an MVP award in a women's hockey league. It was 2019. And of course, we all know the CWHL folded after that. So 6 years later, she wins an MVP award again. And, so much has changed in the world in women's hockey since then. But one thing hasn't changed, which is that she is the most dominant player in women's hockey. And somehow she continues to get better. And something she told reporters after she won is this makes her want to get back on the ice and keep getting better. And you think, like, I don't know how she could get better, but she keeps finding a way. So she just had an incredible performance this year. And it was, nobody was shocked to see that she took home the hardware that she did.
MPP looking for Olympic gold and the Walter Cup for 2025-2026. Biggest question mark, like what team has you still kind of going, ooh, they've got a few gaps they've got to figure out?
I think the Ottawa Charge is one, just going into the draft, they had a lot of contract slots that weren't filled. And then, they took a couple of players out of Russia. The last player that they took out of Russia, she was somebody that I think, reporters weren't really very familiar with her. And when Mike Hirschfeld, the GM, was asked about it after, he explained that the team has hired Mel Davidson, of course, legendary coach, women's hockey executive, scout, you can add a million other things onto that. Really, really smart hockey mind. And she's done some kind of international women's hockey development and is very familiar with both these players. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how that works out. Like, is he able to get them over to North America? What's their transition like? And they could end up being, stars, or it could end up, not working out. So I think that's one of the big question marks for Ottawa. And just, they lost some really key free agents, Cheyenne Darkangelo, who went to Montreal, Teresa Vanisheva, who went to Vancouver with, it feels like, half the stars in the league. So yeah, I think a lot of questions remaining for Ottawa in my mind.
Yeah, it does. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it feels like a new chapter, truly. It feels like such a break away even from the first two seasons. And if you're anything like me, I'm going, wait a minute, where are they playing now? Like, I'm still having to have my names on a piece of paper because there's been so much movement. I'm so excited. Give me your hot takes for next season. Like, what's your spicy opinion going into this Olympic year?
Yeah, and I will just say quickly on that, Anastasia, the screen at the awards yesterday, they showed the all rookie team, and it had Kayla Barnes, Anna Wilgren, and Jen Gardner, all from the Montreal Victoire, and none of them play for Montreal anymore. And I had some Montreal fans sort of like tweet back about that after, just like how deflating that was. But they did get some great young stars in this draft, so there is reason for optimism for them. But my hot take, Anastasia, is that Seattle and Vancouver obviously look fantastic on paper, and you can't deny, the stars that they have. They look like they're going to be the front runners for the Walter Cup next season, but things don't always work out on the ice as they look on paper. And I think in the first season of the PWHL, we saw it took teams a little while to kind of figure out their chemistry and figure out their special teams and how everything's going to work. So I think, when people are talking about how dominant Vancouver and Seattle are going to be, potentially they could be, but I think you also have to account for that adjustment period that they're going to have.
What do you think is going to happen for the Olympics? Because again, this is really a different kind of lead up. Centralization is no longer, and with all due respect, we're almost doing like a soccer model. Like, we're having blackout dates, where international dates, I suppose you call them.
Yeah, exactly. And we did hear that the rivalry series is coming back next year, and shorter than it has been in the past, but it is exactly, I think, kind of like that soccer model. And it's going to be really interesting to see how the Olympics affects a PWHL season. We've just never seen that before. And if you come back from the Olympics with a gold medal, I bet you'll have a bit of jump in your step, I would guess. But it'll also be interesting to see where so many players have moved around across the league. Are we going to see people who thrive in a new environment? Are we going to see people in different roles? Like, next season is going to be just, I think, a huge year in women's hockey. And it's the final year of all of those big contracts signed when the league started. So, yeah, I think it's just going to be a really fun one to watch.
Cannot wait. This has been Anastasia Bucsis, Karissa Donkin, and Bernie. Let's see Bernie one more time.
And Bernie the cat, he's kind of like laying here. Let's bring him over.
He looked a little sleepy at one point in time. It's just because you're working too hard. But Bernie has all the burning news too for women's hockey. So okay.
Watches all the games with me.
Watches all the games. Thank you so much. I cannot wait until the season starts this fall.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for having us.